Hey guys, welcome to Sharks Academy, and in today's video, I'm going to share with you the projections coming into next week. So first of all, let's start off with the dollar index. So for today, I'll be doing only the major pairs, and let's have the entire framework and projections done. So now, with this, we have a break of structure towards the upside. Okay, so this is the BOS towards the upside, and this left behind liquidity highs. So prices makes its way higher, breaks out, breaks towards the downside. So where is the low that created the high? The low that created the high comes from here. So the moment this breaks out of structure over here, we expect a bearish move into liquidity lows beneath this level. You can see this is the support and liquidity lows that we're looking for. So now prices makes its way lower, taps into supply zone here, broke, and creates a trendline liquidity. Can you see? It failed to mitigate, or it failed to grab liquidity towards the downside over here, and in return creates a trendline liquidity where we are going to look for targets in future. So it may not be now, right? Once the trendline is created, it doesn't mean that we should move down from here or from here or from here, right? It has to tap into a supply zone above. So now if I want to be a seller for DXY, where am I going to sell from? Potentially here and here, right? So these two are the areas that I'm looking to sell from. So let's go deeper, all right? On the weekly time frame, we have this supply zone here. Let's go to the daily. So you want to look for buy to sell candles that can potentially push prices towards the downside. So let's see, we have an OB over here, right? And we have a higher one. So what happens when you have these two? Right, you have one over here and you have a higher one over here. So now for me, I'll use the higher one because I understand that this high over here can be used as a liquidity point, right? We have this area over here where prices may grab the liquidity lying above this level, then tap into your supply. And at the same time, you have this trend line over here. Okay, so all of these are potential liquidity areas. So do take note where as prices comes up. So this is where I'm looking for, and the current one will be at this level. So if we can look for some kind of a supply inside of here, we can take sales towards the downside as well. So let's play around the time frames. You realize that at the best price comes from here as well. So this now creates another area for you to sell from. And judging where prices are currently, we still have a bullish move up to this level. So let's go back to the daily, and you can see we are ultimately trying to buy DXY into any of these supply zones as well, right? Most of these areas are valid for sales. And if you could look for some sort of supply here, of course. Otherwise, this would be an area to look for. Right, we're going to grab this liquidity above here. And of course, with current prices, we have a break of structure towards the upside. Over here, we have liquidity highs here. So now, we are definitely bullish for DXY until prices grabs this level. So it can either come from here or beneath over here. So these are the two areas where I'm looking for a buy side move, ultimately into this area over here. So the first forex pair that I'll be talking about will be the Aussie dollar, and you can see currently we have a sell side move. By means of this, we have a break of structure towards the downside, and if you are looking to sell, we are looking to sell high. We are not going to sell here. Okay, so this is where I'm looking for, as well as this one over here. So both of these areas are valid for sales. And can you see that prices changed in terms of direction? We have a high created over here, and then we have a low created over here, right? So low, high, low, broke structure. This is the first sign that tells us that prices wants to go higher to potentially mitigate deeper supply areas. So now currently we are bullish for Aussie dollar. This is the area I'm looking at. So this is a daily demand area. Of course, you can go down to the lower time frames to refine them. So let's play around the time frames. This is a daily BOS. We are looking at the potentially 1 hour. So if you want to refine this entire area, because instead of looking for structural shifts with this entire daily demand, you want to look for specific areas so that you can narrow down your range. So this is a demand. This is also another demand area. And ultimately, these are the two areas I'm looking for buys. So now, if these two happens over here, I'm going to look for buys into whichever range high that was created over here. So let's say if prices goes higher and then suddenly comes back down, this is my liquidity pool. If prices decides to drop from here, then it creates a trend line where I'm going to look for targets, right? And if it shifts here, I'm going to take buys all the way into this area. So this sets the range. So next pair is Euro Pound, and where are we in the markets right now? So let's go down to the weekly time frame, and you can see the entire framework came from here. We have a BOS towards the upside. We have a demand zone over here, and this immediately tells us that we are looking towards this area over here. So I'm pretty sure that I went through this with one of our webinars, and this is where we are targeting for. Okay, and we are definitely looking for buys as long as prices starts to shift. So this is the first sign that prices wants to shift. You can see we have a wick out, right? This can be considered as a break of structure on the weekly time frame, and we are looking for a buy into liquidity highs here, 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 and here. All of these are targets or potential targets. Now, are we going to buy here like this? We are not going to buy this. We're going to wait for prices to pull back before going higher. So let's go down to the daily. And yes, prices may reach out for liquidity highs here from this area. Okay, because on the daily time frame, you are still bullish. Prices broke structure here. You can indeed look for areas to buy, trading this range over here. This. Okay, so break of structure, demand zone, look for structural shifts to push prices higher. Otherwise, if prices were to hit down lower, you're going to look for lower areas to buy from. And this may be an inside bar for you to consider. Otherwise, play on the time frames, you realize that on the lower time frame, on the 4 hours, you have another area over here. So the truth is that all of these are areas for you to potentially buy from. And this is what we get, right? Because you understand that your liquidity highs is here. Look, we are just trying to look for areas to buy into this level. So do we expect prices to shift from here and then just look for targets at this area? We don't do that, right? Over here in Sharks Academy, after prices shifts in structure over here, we are definitely going to take targets at this level or some sort of supply inside of here. This is our TP1, right? In the case where prices taps into any supply created over here to go lower, we are still making profits and we're going to pay the trader. When you do a right analysis, you want to pay yourself. We do not expect every trade that shifts to run 1:10 or 1:20, right? So this is another area to look out for. And similarly, if the shift happens, break of structure, TP1, pulls back, demand area, look for targets. And the same thing will happen over here. Next up, Euro Yen. Similarly, you can see over here now, we have a break of structure towards the downside, which means to say that we are looking for targets at this area. So do we sell from here? Right now, we don't sell from here. If you're going to sell here, right? But you can see now, prices broke structure on the daily. We have this low, high, low, breaks. So this move over here broke the high that created the low. So now we are bullish. Okay, and if I'm looking to sell, again, I want to sell high, I want to sell here. So let's go down to the lower time frames. And where are we in the market? So now you can see this BOS over here on the daily. We are looking for areas to get involved. And we're going to play around the time frames to look for demand areas. So you can see many of these tiny gray areas inside of this wick are actually demand zones on the lower time frame. So let's just go and look for it. Okay, look at this. And let's use the replay button. Where the prices bounce from, you can see this is a 1 minute demand area. Okay, so how do we even know this demand area is going to hold? We do not know, right? That's why we look for confirmations. You can you see that prices taps in, makes a huge rally towards the upside. Failed to break structure just yet on the 15th. I'm looking for a move like this that breaks structure. Because right now we are still trading this sell side range. This is a sell range. Why? Because prices are delivered in this manner. The high that liquidates all of this, the breakdown. So now with this leg, we are bearish. And this may be just internal structure for prices to go lower into where we do not know. Currently, this is the target for this range. So for me to look for buys, I want to wait for this range to break out, which means to say I want to see a movement like this, perhaps targeting this demand first. And for me, this demand is not valid for buys because this demand didn't do anything. This demand didn't break structure. I'm looking for a move down, doesn't matter where, then break structure. In this case, once prices break structure, we are in a bullish trend. And this bullish trend over here is going to be in line with your high time frame bias, which is your daily, right? Because your daily is looking for targets at these highs. So now I want my 15 minutes time frame to be in line with my daily structure bias. And that is why I need this break of structure to happen over here. Okay, so once this breaks, I'm going to look for areas to get involved. Any of these demand areas are ready for you to get involved. And we do not buy like this. We look for confirmations at every single demand zone on the lower time frame. And this is how we actually frame the entire movement towards these daily swing highs. So next up for the euro dollar, one look you know that we are bearish, correct? Because this entire move is just bearish and selling and selling and selling. If you dive into this price action over here and tell yourself, what are you seeing? We are actually bullish currently inside of here. And why is that so? We have a low, we have a high, we have a low, we have a break of structure. And this tells me that liquidity is lying above here. So we are essentially trying to buy into this area. Okay, so if you have watched the previous videos or the post analysis that I've done, we are actually looking for sells here. We are selling above the daily swing point into a potential daily demand. Why? Because when prices break structure here, you are not going to look for buys here, right? You're going to buy here. And this gives you a range to sell into the buy zone, right? So let's go down to the lower time frames and have a quick recap, right, on where did we look for sells. You can see this move over here, break of structure, supply, get involved, get involved, get involved. And this is how we caught euro dollar down towards this daily demand. So once prices test in this area, we are not interested in sells. Okay, and what we're looking for, I'm looking for a high time frame range to create. You can see lows, highs, lows, break of structure. So when this break of structure, this is a H4 BOS. So let's just go to the H4 and you can see it, right? We have a low created here, a high created over here, a low. Now, impulsive break of structure, liquidity highs is here. And this is our protected low, right? This is our pivot low. And now with this, of course, we are looking for liquidity highs above, which means that we're going to look for buys. We are definitely going to buy into this area over here. So now, how do we do that? Play around the time frames. Okay, some of our students caught this move. You can see 15M BOS, 15M demand, 15M BOS. You can buy over here, you can buy over here as well. And look at this. This movement for Friday came from this area, this sell to buy. Can you see this sell to buy? Taps into this area. Do we immediately look for buys like this? We do not do that, right? Because in Sharks Academy, we are using the 3-step process. This is step number 2, identifying S&D zone. Step number 1 is your break of structure, your high time frame bias, and in this case, dictated by this H4 BOS, liquidity highs, S&D zones over here. So now what we're looking for, a simple 15M shift in structure. Can you see? This is the low that created the high. Okay, break of structure, liquidity highs, demand zone, get involved, and this is the rally. So for me, I didn't catch EU, I catch NU instead. So I'll go through with that again. So now ultimately, you know that we are trying to target for this liquidity highs above here after this H4 BOS, right? So this entire range is ready for you to look for buys. So yes, prices may head down to go higher because we have a demand zone here. And we are going to keep looking for buys as long as this low isn't broken, right? Because structure, liquidity comes back down, aim for these areas. So let's go down to the lower time frame. How can we catch moves? This. Okay. So now, if I want to look for buys, we have a new break of structure. Can you see? This is a new BOS. Break of structure, liquidity highs here. So the range is pretty tight right now. If I see a movement down like this, I'm going to look for buys into liquidity highs here. So play around the time frames. Let's go to the 15M. And you can see there is a very clean demand area here. So ultimately, if I'm trying to look for buys, I'm definitely going to look for buys here. And similarly, step 3 process, look for structural shifts. Pull back, buy. Next, we have pound yen, and this may be a tricky one because you can see currently we are still delivering bullishly. We have a BOS towards the upside over here, and this means that our liquidity highs is lying above here. So we are ultimately trying to look for buys into this area. But what can you see over here? We have a support over here, right? And we have relatively equal lows where prices are likely to come back to grab them. It may not be from here. It may be from higher areas like this, or even when prices grabs this, then breaks down. This may happen as well. So it doesn't mean that when you have equal lows or relatively equal lows, it means that prices are going to grab them now, right? So let's go down to the lower time frame. So on the 4 hours time frame, you can see the transfer from weak into strong pants. This is the accumulation process. This is the lows, the lows, the lows, the strong sell that breaks structure. So now we are bullish in this leg. Okay, so where are we bullish until? This is the framework, right? This is the BOS. Let me just mark it out. This is the BOS. This is the liquidity high. And we're looking for buys. And this is the demand zone that got tapped into. Okay, so now we are looking for buy side move into this liquidity high. So how can we catch the continuations? So one of the problems over here is that we have this liquidity trend line. Okay, so let's just go down to the lower time frames. Now, this incentivized prices to hit lower like this. Okay, let me just mark this as red. So now, prices have chances to head down to grab all of this liquidity before moving higher. This is possible. This is one of the scenarios that we have to prepare ourselves for. Otherwise, just keep trading this bullish move. And you can see currently now, break of structure here. And we are looking for this target. If you are trading this range over here. Okay, we have a low created. Then we have a high created now. So this immediate leg is bullish until this level, which means to say that prices can grab liquidity here, move down into this deeper refined area that hasn't been mitigated yet, accumulate here to go higher before grabbing this. This is valid. Alright, so now with this current move, we have a BOS here as well. I'm looking for buys to go into this area. Let's go down to the lower time frame. This is a valid demand. So if prices comes back now, accumulates here, break, demand, you can catch a move into this liquidity highs. So this is how you actually frame the entire schematic. Okay, and of course, this is your TP1 or TP2, right? Because now you can see that you are keep narrowing down your range. From the entire framework over here, you narrowed down into this, and now you narrow down into this, and now you potentially narrow down into this, right? Highs, lows, break of structure. Once you see a BOS, this is the liquidity highs that we're looking for. When prices comes back down, accumulates here, your TP1 should be here, TP2 should be here. And this is how you protect yourself against a potential downside move. Next up for NU, we are actually looking for sells. And if I want to be a seller, where do I want to sell from? I do want to sell from this last buy to sell. So let me just mark this out. This is the last buy to sell. And this comes from a daily BOS. Can you see over here? So this is a daily break of structure. Our high comes from here. So the point of invalidation would be at this level. So honestly speaking, we are still bearish in this framework here. Okay, and I'm looking to sell here. Of course, we don't do that. This is just to show you guys. And for step 3, we're going to look for confirmations towards the downside. And this doesn't mean that we cannot look for buys. Because if I want to be a seller, I want to sell here, right? And this gives us an opportunity to look for buys into these areas. So let's go down to the lower time frame and look at what is going on. So when prices start to deliver bullishly, we understand that all of these are potential internal structure, right? Because the low comes from here and the high comes from here. So if you are going to turn bullish on the high time frame to bring us into areas inside of here, right? All of these are potential supply zones. And once prices breaks this high, we are certain that prices are going to go bullish, okay, into these areas over here. So this is the framework on the high time frame. So now on the lower time frame, on the 1 hour, on the 4 hour, you can see we have a break of structure now. H4 BOS, we have a strong bullish move. This leaves behind liquidity highs above here. Okay, so this is our framework. We are looking to buy into these areas. So now, how do we catch this move for NU? So for those who have watched my shorts under YouTube section, right, you understand that we actually caught this refined area. So now, step number 1, H4 BOS. Step number 2, look for S&D zones. You understand that this is a demand. This is the BOS. This is one of the areas you can get involved. So I didn't get involved here. I caught this news movement over here. So can you see these wicks over here? Inside of these wicks contains demand zones on the lower time frame. So let's go and dive deeper into these areas. So for me, I have to look for fresh order blocks. I have to look for order blocks or demand zones that hasn't been mitigated. So can you see over here? We have a 15 seconds time frame demand area. And if we play back to real time, this is where it taps into, right? Prices taps into this refined area, broke structure here, leaving behind a demand zone on the lower time frame over here. And this is where I look for buys. So this was an 8 minutes demand, and this is where I caught the news movement and smashed TP within 5 to 10 minutes. You can see over here, this was the liquidity. Prices indeed grab liquidity. You can see this wick grabs liquidity and then starts to move downside. So I mean, currently we are still bullish, of course. We are still looking for areas to be met here. And this may bounce from this demand zone over here. So yes, we can create some sort of a liquidity all around here for prices to go lower before going higher. This is a possibility. And this is how I'm planning to catch the NU trade. Next up, for the dollar Canadian, we are bearish. And why is that so? Where did the bearish move begin? Let's track the lows and the highs, okay? Lows, highs, lows, highs, lows, high, low, high, low. So now look at this. This is the first sign that tells you that prices wants to go lower. You are not bearish yet because you do not know whether this is a lower high until it breaks a lower low, right? So now this is definitely hindsight if you're looking for sells here. You want to see prices change in direction and you want to see prices break this level. So when prices breaks this area over here, you are not bearish yet. You want to look for the low that created the high, and the low that created the high comes from here. So truly your only break of structure happens only over here. And now you are bearish. And do you sell here? You want to sell high, right? So let's remove all of this. Prices came back up into the top range inside of here, and then shift in structure again on the daily. Can you see now we have a bearish move here? So we have a BOS, and I'm looking for sells where? Here. So this entire daily supply is ready for sells. But to work with this entire supply on the lower time frame, it means that you are inviting prices to do this to you. Shift, 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 shift before the breakdown. So you may have gotten stopped out for like 5 to 6 times before this actual move shifts. Of course, it depends on the time frame you are working with. If you are working on a 1 minute trying to catch the shift, then you're going to get stopped out many times. But if you understand that this supply zone is so huge, you are working with a daily or potential weekly zone, then if you were to look for the shift on the 1 hour, then perhaps maybe you're going to see 2 real shifts. Okay, and this is just a rough estimation. Okay. So now you can either do that, right, by looking for confirmations on the higher time frame or looking for refined areas on the lower time frame. So let's go to the lower time frame and look for buy to sell areas. So for me, this is the supply area that I'm looking for. So you can be stringent about it and only look for sells when prices taps into this area. Otherwise, play around the time frames on the 30 minutes as well. All of this not so interested. And you realize that the one that is apparent to me would be this buy to sell over here, right? Low, high, break structure, and these areas are looking for supply areas. So I'm looking for a move up into this area. And when you're looking for a move up into these areas, it shows that you can look for buys. You can look for lower time frame break of structures like this on the 1 hour. Right? Lower low, break of structure. So now this liquidity high comes from here, which means to say that I can look for pullback to go higher. And let's go and see. And let's go and find it. 15M, perhaps you have one demand here where you can look for buys. Otherwise, go to the lower time frame. 5 minutes, 3 minutes. All has been mitigated, you can see, right? Or even the 1 minute. Okay, so everything inside of this low to high that was created based on this framework is valid for buys. So you do not have to buy here. You can buy even lower, right? Because your low comes from here. This is the low. So truly, if prices were to come back from here, were to pull back towards the last buy to sell, you are still valid for buys. Okay? And that's just how it works. Look at this demand. Unmitigated. Okay, this one over here. So if prices really comes back all the way down into this demand, I am going to look for buys. Because I understand that my liquidity high hasn't been met yet. We have a break of structure here. Right? So we are looking at this on the 1 minute. And this is the same as what you're going to see on the high time frame. We have a low, a break of structure. So when this happens, this is your liquidity highs. All of this may just be creation of liquidity for prices to grab, tap into this demand before going higher. So this is a possibility. However, if prices comes back up now, grabs this liquidity, then comes back down, and this is a different story. Why? Because your target has been met, and this move down may not hold, right? This area over here may not hold. So we need to reevaluate this if it happens. Lastly, for dollar yen, based on this outlook over here, I am bearish. And why am I bearish? Again, track the movements. Highs over here, you can see. Highs, lows, highs, lows, highs. Break of structure. So now if I want to be a seller, I'm going to sell high. I'm going to sell here. And this means that I can look for potential moves towards the upside. Okay, you can see this is equal highs here on the lower time frame on the 4 hours, right? So now with this, we can expect a move up to grab them either way. And where am I looking to sell from again? The higher time frames over here, potentially. So this is where I'm going to look for sells, and unless prices continue to break structure here, then you can look for continuation sells. Otherwise, the best price to of course sell is from this top of the entire range. Okay, so now let's go down to the lower time frames and look for what we can do. Understanding that prices broke structure here, of course, right? And I'm ultimately looking for a move up like this before moving down. So this means that I can catch the continuation buys, right? Look at this. BOS, liquidity highs, demand area. So this is definitely a valid area for you to buy from. Saying if prices were to pull back now before grabbing these equal highs. So this equal highs hasn't been mitigated or liquidated just yet. And now we have current bullish movement happening. So this shift in structure could be the one that grabs this equal highs or resistance level like this. Okay. So this is the projection for dollar yen. I want to be a seller ultimately. So if you're not confident with buys, then just wait for sells at this area. Otherwise, if you understand that this is liquidity lying above this area, you can look for this bullish movement to go higher. This marks the end of the weekly market analysis, and I'd like to thank you guys for your time for watching this. Make sure that you understand what we are talking about, because this is not financial advice, and you only take these trades if you understand what we are talking about and if these are in line with your projection for the upcoming week. So I appreciate you guys, and I'll see you in the next one.